of defending city council because I have nothing to do with city council other than attending meetings. But as a taxpayer, it's hard for me to get too upset when over the last 10 years we basically have had a 40% reduction in our city taxes. Now people, understand, you have city taxes and you have our county taxes. Our millage rate has gone from, what was it? We're down right now in the 08 budget to 1.2. We started our first year at 1.87. Year two, we went up to over 2. So we have had dramatic decreases. We have obviously, we're the only city really that has a spending cap. So we have the inherent positions in there. So whether you like it or not, the city has done well with our millage rates. They have, over the last 4 years, reduced 3% each year, which for anyone who's homesteaded means that offsets the increase that we even get from our homestead raises. So quite frankly, that's one area that I really think the council has done well in.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Frank Recca.
It was nice to know when I walked in tonight that Frank Recker had no chance of winning this debate because Jim Recker was on the ballot. I accept defeat. I have a question for Dr. Guidry, please. Andy. You knew this was coming.
Thank you. I was feeling lonely.
The lifeline's available. Lifeline's available.
Yes.
All right, Andy. I assume since you will inherit the 08 budget if elected to council, you are familiar with that budget and the general operating revenue and the amount of money that's subject to the cap in the general fund. Tell us, what is that amount subject to the cap in 08, the current budget? And if you had to look at any department forced to cut back, where would you look and how would you cut it?
You know, it's funny because right in my little black bag, I happen to have a copy of the budget. So if I wanted to quote you a figure, it'll take me 2 seconds to walk back there. What's really important is that the city of Marco Island has completely misused our good money for a sewer program that we do not need. They have totally not supported that program, and I'm just disgusted with the fact that they could do this to us, and so that's where I stand with that.
All right. In all fairness to the taxpayers, I think to consider electing someone to council, they should have some feel for what the current budget is because they will take charge of that budget. So no offense, Andy, but I think you owe it to the voters to have some idea what it's about. The STRP, as you know, has nothing to do with general operating fund. There's nothing to do with that. That was done before my time, folks. Maybe most of you, maybe some of you who paid attention, how they calculated the ERCs that we all pay. I'm not on sewer. I made a decision, I wouldn't fight it. Why? I considered the economic realities. I considered the potential science effects, the environmental effects. I considered the potential for the state to say, you're going to have to. And they've done that in Monroe County, as you know. They have to be finished next year in all the keys with their sewers. I considered the potential of going 10 years, maybe 15 years before that happened. I also reflect back in the mid-'80s when it was stopped by Collier County, and at that time it would have been $4,000 to hook it up. So thanks to whoever stopped it, I'm now looking at $20,000 on a half-an-acre lot in 2011 with a septic in the middle. Maybe the last person. But most importantly, I think of it as a pure business decision. We have built a jumbo jet for 500 passengers. We made the engines to fit the jet. We made the fuselage big enough for 500 passengers. And now we're saying, let's only put 200 seats in it. That's called stranded, wasted money for the bigger engines, the bigger fuselage, the more technical avionics. And guess what? The 200 passengers are going to be paying for the stranded, wasted portion of that capital project. That's what we all faced. It's business. It's business. What we need to focus on, if we all had took the collective energy in this room and focused on getting that price down, because we're all here about money, let's face it. If this were for free, we'd all be at the Snook drinking, having a good time. It's about the money. We need to find a way to get it down. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, folks, that concludes round one. We're going to go again. I just want to remind there was some question about the timing here. So just to refresh your idea of the timing, the fellow asking the question has 30 seconds to ask the question. The fellow answering the question has 2.5 minutes, and then the rebuttal to the response is 2 minutes. So here we go for round two. Dr. Guidry.
See, I told you, here's the budget. The question I have is for Mr. Gibson, please.
Yes, Doctor.
You have been quoted as saying that you support this sewer system. I have to ask you, are the waterways on Marco polluted from septic tanks?
It doesn't matter. Now, you asked me a question. It's a very simple thing. It's not about...
I'm listening.
Well, please do. At this point, it's not about pollution. It's not about who's on sewer, who's not on sewer. It is about it being a bad business decision. And I do not have sewers. I am going to be one of those hardship cases that is not going to pay for my sewer until I sell my home. However, I am for finishing the SDRP because I cannot turn around and charge people, have their water bills increased by 24%, perhaps as high as 38%, to pay for what has gone in already. We have many people on this island. I'm not a politician, so I'm not just speaking to the voters and speaking for the voters. I'm speaking for all the taxpayers and all the people that pay these bills. And for us to just say, hey, let's pay off this 35 million or 30 million or 24 million or whatever that million may be, let's pay it off and walk away from it. I am for STRP. I have had in the past bad experiences with septic. But that's beside the point. I'm not pro or anti-sewer. I am just against bad business decisions.
Well, I'll say one thing that is unique. You know, the part about that $35 million that keeps getting punted out there by the pro-sewer group is that what they're not saying to you is that the vast majority of those monies will be able to be used by the current structures of the island. Fact two, one of the first meetings that I ever came to was at this building. This was a long time ago, and you know I was standing by those back doors just outside with with a group, and this gentleman walked up. He's a patient of mine, and he said to me, "You know, Doc, these people in there, they don't know what they're talking about. These septic tanks, they leak and they're horrible. The environment's getting crushed. We have to have sewer." And I'm like, wow, no kidding. I didn't know that. This is great. Why don't you go to the city, tell them where all these bad septics are, and you can prove that we need sewers. Oh, well, you know, I don't know about all that. You know, I'm not going to go through that kind of a study. The point is, that is the argument that I've always heard from patients who say who tell me that, yeah, we need sewer, Doc, bad septics, to friends, you know, that I see that are pro-sewer. Oh yeah, no, the septic tanks, they all leak. Every time I ask them, just listen, if you know of one leaking, please go tell the city, because they can finally prove that we need it. Funny, they never have. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Butch Nealon.
I have a question for Frank Recker.
It's good to be loved.
Frank, you mentioned that we've built a 500-passenger airplane with the big engines and everything else, and now we are going to fly that with 300 passengers. I believe you also state that at the end or by the election time, 85% of the people on the island will already be on the sewer system. The numbers don't fit. It's either we're mostly done or we're not. Which is it?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but that never would stop me from answering.
Good.
At the end of December of 07, 85% of the living units on Marco, that's condos and single-family homes, 85% will either be hooked up or committed to sewer. The sewer line will be in front of their house. 85%. Those are facts. And I would encourage people, don't listen to us spew numbers. Do your own research. Let your own accountants look at the numbers. Verify on your own, because you will see this is pure business decision. Now, when they made the assessments, they built into the plan expanding the plant to take care of this additional waste. That is the airplane. That can't be reversed. If it's stopped, we have an unfunded liability finishing that gigantic plant. That's where about 30+ million comes from in and of itself. And it's no rocket science, people. Who's going to pay for it? It's not going to be sales tax. It's from the Utility Enterprise Fund. The way we're all going to pay for that, me, increased water rates dramatically. Those on sewer, increased sewer rates and increased water rates. Why? The $4,600 of that assessment amount is for the capital expansion of the plant. That's not going to come from several thousand homeowners if it's stopped. The plant has to be finished. It can't be turned around. That liability is still there. They can't take the money from anywhere other than utility revenue. That's all of us. So people on sewer, if you're on sewer and you vote for stopping this, something's wrong with your math. You really need to talk to your accountants. This is fact, not spin. Don't take my word. Do your own digging. Thank you.
I disagree, and that is pure spin. The real issue is that the increased capacity of the plant, which is slated to cost around $38 million, has not been started. The permit hasn't even issued yet. As a matter of fact, the intent to issue the permit came out December 3rd. So no permit, no money spent, nothing has been done to increase the capacity at the plant yet. The the number of people who will be connected to or committed to the septic or to the sewers is a rough number, somewhere in the 80% range. But keep in mind, 70% of the people were connected to the sewer at the outset of the STRP. And this is where the disingenuity of these numbers that the city has been throwing around for years comes from. At the outset of the STRP, they said 70% of the sewage on the island goes to the treatment plant, 30% goes to septic systems. Sounds like a small project. Bring in the other 30%. What they didn't say was that only 40 miles of road on Marco Island had sewer lines in them, leaving 60 miles. Marco actually has 100.85 miles of road. So there was another 60 miles of road to be dug up to put in sewer lines. Now, if they'd have come to us and said, only 40% of the island is sewered, we're going to dig up the other 60% and sewer it, we might have told them, go away. But we didn't know that. They said 70% is done, only 30% left. In the 2 years that we have endured the septic tank replacement program, only 16 miles have been added to that sewer system. 44 miles still have to be done. Taking your word, sir, a good business decision. Stop now. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Waldock?
Time to pick on one of my buddies. Jerry, Mr. Gibson, Given the question on density reduction and the city's proposed mandate of reducing density, what is your position on density rights, and the trading or selling of density rights associated with city-owned property?
Well, I think the city has laid out, Wayne, the fact that by '09 we will have a 2% reduction in density, and followed up by another 2% through the year 2013. So I really don't see density being a problem. It is certainly an area that I think we need to be vigilant on. We need to keep a close eye on it. As far as the other point that you brought up, I assume you're referring to the Glon property. There had been some talk about you know, selling off those rights. I think that would be a total breach of conduct on the part of anybody that would do that. The other thing to keep in mind with density is all the lots are platted. I mean, basically the condominium construction is finished. The only area that we really need to be vigilant, I think, is first of all on mixed use, going into commercial areas and now making them, adding dwellings to those. And I just think as long as we're working towards that reduction of 4% by the year 2013, I don't see it as a problem today, and I don't see it as a problem in the future.
Well, my point on that is I will do whatever is legal to reduce density as long as it does not affect the legal rights of property ownership or negatively affect the city. I propose that all necessary parking be on-site or on the same side of the street as the subject property. Off-site parking, to me, is dangerous, such as Pier 81 and even the Marriott. I don't like the idea of having parking across the street where it's dangerous for somebody to go across the street to do their parking, so I would be opposed to that as well. And that would, by having these high-rises along the waterfront properties and then having the parking across the street allows them to build higher buildings and more units in those buildings, and I recommend not doing that. I hope you're in agreement with that.
I have no argument. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Roger Hall.
I'd like to hear from Mr. Nalen. One of the things I believe is that in order to understand the complexities of this community, you have to go to the meetings, you have to study what's going on, the issues, the contracts. I came here in 2005. I've been going to meetings ever since I got here. Mr. Nalen has been at most of those meetings. Mr. Beatty's at all of those meetings. Some of these other gentlemen I've never seen. I don't know where they came from. They just show up all of a sudden to run for council. And I'm saying, okay, but how can you understand what's driving the bus around here? And what's driving the bus around here is the money. And I'd like Mr. Nalen to explain how our city budget has gone, our city operations have gone from 10 million in '86 to 15 million, 2006, 15 million 2007, 18 million 2008. When I started here in 2005, we bragged that we had $50 million in reserves. I sat out here, 50 million in reserves. What a wonderful thing. Now those reserves are gone. We're down to $4 million. On top of that, we've taken out a line of credit with the Bank of America for another $18 million. That's a $68 million spread. How are we going to afford this? How are we going to afford to pay for all this?
If we stop the STRP in February and March, that $30 million that will have been expended is in the form of the 5 districts. The underground piping is installed in 5 districts. The lift stations and all of that are done. There are a number of other items that are in that budget that we can cancel, like the second deep injection well, which makes absolutely no sense It's a $5 million expense that we don't have to do, we don't need it. But the reality of it is that a number of people will want to connect to the sewer system. They'll want to take advantage of the fact that the pipe is in front of their homes. And if they do, then they should have to pay an impact fee. As far as the special assessments go, that should be canceled. Nobody should have to pay a special assessment, and the utility will end up absorbing the remainder of that $30 million. I've estimated that if 1,000 people, it's not as funny as it sounds, believe me. I've estimated that if 1,000 people hook up, we will pick up around $4 million in impact fees. If you leave that leaves $26 million to be paid for by the utility. If we use the low-interest bonds that the city is presently getting, then that works out to about $1.7 million in debt service a year. The rate increase that we were all visited with in October of this year is a 15.5% rate increase on water and sewer and 20% on reuse water. That is going to generate around $3.5 million to the utility, more than double what we need to make the STRP go away. That's where the money's coming from.
Roger.
And my concern is that this community is being taxed out of the island, or off the island. There are so many people here on fixed incomes that just can't begin to carry the franchise fees and taxes and addition, this new fire assessment thing, which is a whole new level of tier of taxes. There's $110 million more to be spent over the next 4 years implementing these next 42 miles of road, in addition to the spiraling budget for our community. And I just don't know how we can carry this load. On top of that, we now find out our bridges are in major disrepair. We spent $27 million on Collier Boulevard, and then we say, oh my goodness gracious, we should have checked the bridge. Bridge is bad. Instead of Collier Boulevard was the state's responsibility. We spent $1,300 for each one of the 20,000 residents on this island spent $1,350 beautifying Collier Boulevard without even bothering to think maybe we ought to fix the Smokehouse Bay Bridge before we do it. Now we're in a place where we got to go around and have an emergency funding to replace the bridge so we can use the road that we just got through beautifying. Doesn't make any kind of sense. So I think we've got to pull in, stop the spending, stop the construction, figure out where we are, figure out how we're going to pay for where we are, let the island heal, let the smoke clear, let the dust settle, and then we can get going again with priorities and dealing with the things that need to be fixed instead of spending $110 million more on something that doesn't even need to be fixed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, where are we up to? Joe Beatty.
Wayne Waldeck, I have a question for you. Hi, Wayne. Wayne, I'm always very hurt when people who speak out, voice their opinion on city government, are hurt by names and things that come against them for doing this. In the press many times, you've shown me great disrespect by calling me and leaders in our city who've spoken out against their city government, members of citizens against virtually anything. I have to ask you, sir, or everything, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I have to ask you, how does this attribute of yours allow you to be a representative of all the people of our city, including those who don't quite agree with you?
I'm sure there will always be people that will disagree with me, and that's okay. If I can please 50% of the people, I've done 50% of the job. I'm going to try and please almost everybody, but I know I'm not going to do that. I have always opposed people sitting, criticizing our city government where it's unnecessary. The recall committee. That has gone to federal court, if I'm not mistaken, not federal court, that has gone to the state Supreme Court and failed. The CARES proposition, or CARES programs, that has failed several times. There's a lot of programs that have gone before and filing complaints against the recall, I said that, also against Arceri and for the, what is it, the, what was that on? That was, say that again? But anyway,
Sunshine.
the Sunshine Law, and that failed. Everything has failed on these accounts, and that means that these broadcasting of what people are saying in the blogs and in the newspaper, those are the ones that are responsive, the ones that are in the newspaper. And I disagree with them, I really do. And I believe they are citizens of against virtually everything, unfortunately. I would like to see them pro-city and build our city instead of trying to tear it down in the court system. The people that serve us, they serve us well. You may not agree with that, that's okay, but I don't know anybody that sits up on that city council, including somebody that's here tonight. I'm sure he does. He tries to do a good job, and he's in the courts now, and I'm sorry for that. But unfortunately, we've got to take a stand somewhere, and I've taken a stand against talking out against the city.
Wayne, you didn't really answer my question, but let me rebut in the following way. First of all, everyone in this room loves our city. We wouldn't be here, our families wouldn't be here, and I sure wouldn't be running for city council if I didn't love my city.
Nor would I.
Am I, sir, a member of Citizens Against Virtually Everything when my city council tries to deny me state tax relief? Am I, sir, a citizen against virtually everything when my city council moves to deny me the right to vote with the rest of my Florida citizens on January 29th and moves back their tenure in office 8 months to stay in office and keep me from voting? Am I, sir, a citizen against virtually everything when my city representatives attempt to take litigation against their citizens when their citizens exercise their right to petition their government? I would submit to you, sir, that what our citizens want, okay, is a government that represents them. They don't want representatives on the council that call them citizens against virtually everything or anything or whatever it might be simply because they disagree. The attributes of